Welcome to your favorite bookish podcast, Fully Booked and Caffeinated. I'm Kelsey,
And I'm Heather.
and today we will be discussing and reviewing I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Iain Reid. As usual, let's talk about our fuel for this discussion. What are you drinking, Heather?
I am drinking a mini cherry Coca-Cola because that was all I had on quick hand.
Yeah, but that sounds crisp and refreshing.
It is. It's hitting the spot, I won't lie.
That sounds nice. I could go for a cherry Coke.
I've been on a cherry Coke kick. I always loved cherry soda, but it's been like a problem. I need to go to Wawa and get a fountain cherry Coke.
Oh, the fountain cherry Coke from the machine, the fancy machine. Oh, that hits. That hits different. It's like a McDonald's soda.
Yeah,
those just like hit different. What do they put in that syrup?
I don't know why McDonald's fountain drinks taste different than other fast food restaurant fountain drinks, but they just do.
Yeah, like they're putting crack in the syrup. They're probably using like the old syrup that still has like cocaine and stuff in it.
Probably.
I don't know. That's allegedly.
Don't quote you on that.
Anyway, I have an unnecessary backstory, but I went to Walmart because I had to get an outfit for my Memorial Day party. And it's a good one. Anyway, so we went and they had a bunch of like ground coffees on sale. So I got Dunkin' Blueberry Muffin coffee. And I had it this morning iced with a little French vanilla creamer.
That sounds really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds very good.
It was. And it wasn't like, actually, it was pretty blueberry. It was good though, because obviously I love blueberry. So
I haven't tried the blueberry donut yet. Coffee at Dunkin' because I got the donut flavored in a coffee before, and it was okay. I'm just like I'm afraid to change it up from my blueberry butter pecan.
Is it donut flavored syrup?
It is.
Oh, I haven't tried that.
Yeah,
the tomorrow. Butter pecan and blueberry is just so good.
I know. I had it this morning.
Wow. Okay. I'm jealous. I've been going to Starbucks lately because my Dunkin' has just not been delivering. But anyway, okay, cheers.
Cheers.
Okay. Before we get into it, trigger warning, there will be discussion of suicide, so please keep that in mind. So Iain Reid is from Canada. He's always been a writer. He had a weekly column for the National Post. His work has also appeared in the New Yorker. As far as books, he was originally a nonfiction writer. He wrote 2 award-winning nonfiction memoir-style books, and I'm Thinking of Ending Things is his first fiction novel, which came out in 2016. It was adapted into a Netflix film in 2020, which we will be discussing later, where Reid was one of the executive producers, so he did have a heavy say in how it was adapted. Reid said he actually had a hard time finding a publisher who would pick the book up. And Simon & Schuster finally picked it up, but they didn't have much faith in it. The book ended up being on the New York Times bestseller list, being translated into over 20 languages, and was obviously made into a film. Plus, award-wise, it was a finalist for the Shirley Jackson Award, named NPR's Best Book of the Year in 2016, and the year's best by the Notable Books Council. Regardless of the mixed reviews, it's been a really successful book. And Reid also says that he purposely left the ending up to the reader's interpretation, which we'll be discussing our interpretations today.
Very nice.
So this book is classified as horror, and it's not what you typically think of as horror, but it's more psychological horror, which we'll also discuss more later. But here's the book summary. This is from Goodreads. If you have the paperback, all it says on the back is, you will be scared, but you won't know why. Which I really love that they just leave it all up to your imagination there. And a lot of people said that about this book, like go in completely blind, don't look too much into it, just like go in with the unknown. So, but Goodreads has a description, as they always do for us. So, this deeply scary and intensely unnerving novel follows a couple in the midst of a twisted unraveling of the darkest unease. You will be scared, but you won't know why. I'm thinking I'm thinking of ending things. Once this thought arrives, it stays, it sticks, it lingers. It's always there, always. Jake once said, sometimes a thought is closer to truth, to reality, than an action. You can say anything, you can do anything, but you can't fake a thought. And here's what I'm thinking. I don't want to be here. In this smart and intense literary suspense novel, Iain Reid explores the depths of the human psyche, questioning consciousness, free will, the value of relationships, fear, and the limitations of solitude. Tense, gripping, and atmospheric, I'm Thinking of Ending Things pulls you in from the very first page and never lets you go. That part is true. All right, so the story starts off with just a very ominous tone. Like, the narrator definitely has lots of stuff going on in her head. And the narrator is Jake's girlfriend. We never learn her name, so I'm going to be referring to her as the girlfriend. They've been dating for only 6 or 7 weeks, but they're on a road trip to meet his family. And from the beginning, she has this ever-present thought that she's going to, quote, end things. She likes Jake, but she doesn't see things going anywhere with their relationship, and she's wrestling with this because it's kind of unfair to be going to meet his family. And also, she's kind of in this debate with herself about being alone and kind of convincing herself that being alone is okay and like weighing the back and forth, basically trying to decide if relationships are worth it or if being alone is how we're meant to be. And being with another person and letting them get to know you inside your own head versus losing your independence.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's definitely what how the character felt about like commitment.
Yeah. And it's definitely like through the whole thing. It's like back and forth, and like convincing both ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Jake is kind of quirky and extremely intelligent. So I feel like some of his behaviors are kind of rude, but obviously that can happen with people who are very intellectual. Like, he turns up the music while they're talking, or if he doesn't want to talk about a subject, he'll just change it abruptly without saying it, like without warning.
I felt like his character was on the spectrum. Like, that was kind of like the vibes I was getting, which is interesting.
Yeah, I felt the same way, and I feel like I got that also because of his extreme intelligence.
Yeah.
We also find out that there's this mysterious caller who has been tormenting the girlfriend, leaving messages, almost exact same message every time, calling in the middle of the night, calling multiple times, and the number is her own number that's showing up on the phone. So they get to his parents' house. Dinner is super weird. Jake shuts down, barely talks. The mom definitely has some mental health issues. She's hearing voices. She's pulling out her hair. It's just all a lot. Then Jake confesses he has a brother, which is kind of shocking because the girlfriend didn't know this, and says that the brother had mental health issues too, but Jake had to cut him out of his life because he was being a stalker. And that's the last we hear of that. So the parents encourage them to stay the night because it's snowing, but Jake apparently has to work in the morning, apparently. So they need to get home. They randomly stop at Dairy Queen, which is the most random thing in the world.
It's almost like midnight.
Literally.
It was like 11 o'clock
Not
at
on
night.
my bingo card.
Yeah.
It's a literal blizzard. Like, they can't see out of the windshield, but Dairy Queen is open. And I feel like this is true. This is a true statement that Dairy Queen would be open in these conditions.
Well, you gotta get a blizzard and a blizzard.
They want to stop for blizzards in the blizzard. But they get frozen lemonades, which is the worst possible winter choice. Who is like in the middle of the winter, wow, I wish I had a frozen lemonade.
Yeah.
That made me angry. But okay, I get it. It also made Jake angry. He was very upset that he got this lemonade when he really wanted a blizzard. So anyway, at Dairy Queen, there's this girl with a rash. I couldn't really tell what kind of rash. It kind of sounded like a psoriasis situation.
That was the vibe. That was how I envisioned it when I read it.
But like extreme, like very inflamed and like flaky. And I don't know if she should be working around food with how they were describing this. But she just randomly comes up to the girlfriend and says, I'm worried for you. And the girlfriend has the weird feeling that she recognizes her. And then it just kind of puts this sense of unease, like, should I have asked that girl if she's okay? And then the girl just kind of clams up, and Jake is like, let's go. We got to get these lemonades and hit the road. And then they don't want their lemonades anymore. So Jake is like, we need to throw out these lemonades. They're not going to be leaking all over my car, which is another like quirky behavior that I could definitely associate with, behavioral aspects. So they go to a school in the middle of nowhere to throw out their lemonades.
Like the ride to the school
is on like a gravel road.
A long gravel road. Like he's going out of his way to throw out these lemonades. Like at this point, I know littering is bad, but just do it at this point.
Just do it. I mean, they're off-roading. They would have been better off turning around and going back to the Dairy Queen and throwing them out at the Dairy Queen, which is definitely still open. And the girlfriend is like, okay, this is weird. Why is there not a real road to get to this school? Which I agree with. Yes. And then it turns out it's this massive school. And he says that, like in the country, there's like 10 regions that come to this school because it's the only school around. And I'm like, with all those tax dollars, they can't pave the road? I don't know. Anyway, so Jake has to go and, throw out the lemonades. And then he comes back to the car and she's like, okay, can we get the fuck out of here? Like, we're in the middle of nowhere. We need to get home. We're in a blizzard. It's getting kind of weird. And she's really like, wow, if I needed a sign that I need to leave this relationship, this is it. But then he just decides, like, this is setting the mood. Like, we're in a little snow globe. We're vibing. I'm going to start kissing you. And she's into it. She's like, you know what? Okay. And Jake freaks out. He says that he saw a peeping Tom that saw them kissing in the school. He was looking out the window and he saw them kissing.
During a blizzard.
Like, that guy's a pervert. I'm going to go tell him off. So he disappears. And she's waiting. It's freezing cold. And he doesn't come back. So eventually she goes into the school after him. But she sees a janitor in the hallways that terrifies her. She just gets an immediate bad feeling and she starts looking for a place to hide. And as she's trying to hide, she looks out and sees that Jake's car is gone and just has this overwhelming sense that the janitor's going to harm her. She needs to get away. She needs to hide. She also is like, oh, it must be a misunderstanding. Jake wouldn't leave me. And I'm like, okay. So right around here is where the narration starts to get fuzzy, and the girlfriend starts using we instead of I to describe her own thoughts. So she finds herself in the custodial closet, and as the narration keeps switching, it's revealed that they never actually had a relationship at all. The story of them meeting in the bar during trivia is true, but Jake never had the courage to give her his number. And the entire relationship was a figment of his imagination. So the janitor, who's revealed to be a middle-aged Jake, finds them. I'm using them because it's we now. Custodial closet. He gives the narrator a metal clothes hanger and says, I'm thinking of ending things. The narrator agrees, straightens the hanger out, and stabs himself in the neck. As they bleed to death from their injuries, the narrator refers to themselves as, quote, a single unit, back to one, me, only me, Jake, alone again, unquote. So what were your first impressions of this ending?
I thought the ending was clever because the way that he starts the book really throws you off, that you're not, I think that you're not expecting the ending. Because obviously, taking the phrase, I'm thinking of ending things, you can take that multiple ways. So the way that he starts the novel, you think that it's going to be about like this breakup, and the vibe I was going into it, I thought like, oh, this guy's going to like murder his girlfriend or something. It was going to be something along those lines. And then when you get to the end and you realize that it's a suicide attempt instead, I'm like, oh, okay. It's a good shot to the system.
Yeah, I was thinking the murder too. And then I was like, I think we read too many thrillers.
Yeah, probably.
My first thought was, holy shit, what a horrible way to die,
Mm-hmm.
especially by suicide.
Yeah.
But I immediately hopped on Reddit right after finishing because I was like, I am missing a lot. And it's like I wanted to go back and reread it from that lens because the parts that are intercut, which is like the conversations between, you don't know who it is, but it's conversations
Mm-hmm.
between people who are talking about a man who died, and then they find out that he died by suicide, and then they find his journals, and then, it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
unfolding between these just random conversations. I was like, I want to go back and read those because now that we know what happened and
Yes.
what it's about.
Yeah.
But instead of doing that, I went on Reddit. So a few things for us to discuss, and you already kind of touched on it, but the title, I'm thinking of ending things as a very dramatic wording of
Mm-hmm.
ending a relationship.
Yeah.
And that's what we're led to believe it means from the beginning. But of course, it's actually referring to suicide.
Yeah.
Throughout the book, there's this whole focus on thoughts and how thoughts are the only real thing.
Yes.
So the fact that I'm thinking of ending things, even from the very beginning, it's like, okay, once that thought comes into my mind, it's not leaving. And so I am going to end things. So when we're getting it from the girlfriend's point of view, every time that something happens, she's like, oh, did I need another sign? I know that I'm
Yeah.
ending things. I know that I'm breaking up with Jake. So it's never a question of whether things are going to end, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's just a matter of when.
Exactly. So here's my interpretation of the different characters, and then I want to hear if you thought differently on any of these. So basically, all of the characters are created by Jake. The caller is Jake's psychosis and subconscious. So it gives the reader a clue that there's something off about the story because right off the bat, the call is coming from the girlfriend's number. So it's basically like the call is coming from inside the house, that type of thing. The brother is also Jake. This lends itself to a split personality type thing because he's talking about that mental illness that the brother has. The mother might also be Jake because of the mental illness that they clearly hint at. The peeping Tom at the school, I think, is also Jake because obviously he was a custodian, and then people said that he was, acting kind of weird and had some weird behaviors. And the girl with the rash at Dairy Queen, I think, is also Jake's subconscious because of the familiarity and also the way that she says she's worried about her, because
Mm-hmm.
obviously her is Jake. The only one that I'm not positive is the mother. So I'm like, that could be a genetic reference.
Yeah, I don't think I took like the mother and father as being Jake, but I feel like a majority of the other characters were Jake, like you said.
It's crazy that the caller is just never, like, even the caller's question is never addressed again.
Yeah, that actually kind of angered me a little bit. There were too many unanswered questions for me with this. Like, there were so many things that were brought up or happened, and then they were just never touched on again, which I guess is obviously a choice that the author made for various reasons to make the book how it was. But for me personally, I like my things, it's a nice little bow on top.
It's that whole leaving it up to interpretation thing, but I agree with you. There's some things that, even if they're in this kind of like abstract imagery way, they still need to be like addressed again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So let's talk about this horror aspect. The whole book is just written with an overwhelming tension, and that's where people get the horror element. So you know something isn't fully right, but you can't put your finger on it. There's a quote when the girlfriend is thinking about how she tells about the scariest thing that ever happened to her, and she says, quote, "My story is not like a movie, I'll say. It's not heart-stopping or intense or blood-curdling or graphic or violent. No jump scares. To me, these qualities aren't usually scary. Something that disorients, that unsettles what's taken for granted, something that disturbs and disrupts reality. That's scary." And I think this is why a lot of reviewers say this is smart writing, because Reid is describing exactly the horror that he was going for
Yeah.
from the narrator's mouth. You know what I mean? Like, it is that something that disrupts reality and something that just makes you feel unsettled. It's kind of like the feeling of like feeling like someone's watching you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you can't put your finger on it. I also saw someone on Reddit say that horror movies are usually just a series of bad decisions. But in this case, all of the decisions the main character made seemed right. Like, seemed like the same thing that you would do in that situation. So that made the anxiety worse.
I will say, like, I definitely was creeped out a couple times throughout the book. Like, I felt like that foreboding feeling of something was going to happen. It was kind of almost like I was expecting a jump scare a couple times, and then it never came to fruition. So he does the horror. I do think that there is kind of like a horror aspect to it because I was genuinely scared that I would consider it.
Yeah,
horror,
I agree.
so.
I think that the car ride there to the parents' house, you definitely feel that tension, but like they said, you don't know why. Like, it's just, it's not just because she's having this internal struggle about the breakup. There's like something unsaid that you're kind of like, okay, something's a little off. And then the whole interaction at the parents' house is like, to me, like the climax of that tension because the mom is very unpredictable. Jake is acting super weird. Like, I was nervous that Jake was gonna like snap, and I don't know, it was just so uncomfortable that I was like waiting for something to happen, and nothing really does.
No, kind of left me with a feeling of disappointment when they all said is done and they're leaving the house to go back home, and was like nothing happened. The only things that really happened were she looks at a picture and she sees herself as a child, and Jake's like, you don't know who that is? Like, that's me. And she's like, that's crazy. It looks just like me. And then when she's in the basement, and there's definitely like that creepy feeling in the basement, and then and then again, they bring up how the door can only be locked from inside. And I don't know if that was some kind of play on, was he like locked in the basement as like a child or something?
Yeah, okay.
You know,
that's the vibe I was getting.
Yeah.
Because there were the scratches, and she's like, what are the scratches from? And he's like, oh, like we used to have a dog or something.
And there was like artwork down there and like an easel and or a canvas or something. So it was, is that where he went? Is that, because obviously we know that he has this mental instability. So and the parents seem to want the best for him but don't know how to get it for him because of what he's dealing with. So I thought that was kind of confusing.
That confused me a lot because obviously Jake was like shutting down the basement. Like, oh, you don't have to go down there. It's just a hole. Like, there's nothing down there. And then she finds the creepy paintings, and I was like, I don't really get it.
And I didn't understand when she's in his bedroom and she finds the photos. I didn't get that either.
Yeah, they were like close-ups of body parts, but it was not like dirty body parts.
No, and there was like a girl, and then there's always a man in the background, but you can never see him. He's kind of like a silhouette, and then she says like, oh, that's Jake. Like, I get it now. Like, it's Jake. And I'm just like, is it showing him as being kind of almost like a peeping Tom himself, that he can't get women, so he just creeps on them? Not like I'm not meaning that like a bad way, but like he just doesn't have the social capacity to talk to women or to make anything happen with women, so he kind of just focuses in on them in a weird stalkerish way.
Yeah, that was the vibe I got from the photo, for sure. That it was kind of showing that he had that like peeping Tom. Yeah. Or like maybe not even peeping Tom, but just like watching from afar type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the dinner part at the parents' house I liked, because that's when it was kind of like, oh my God, what's going to happen? But then it kind of got off the rails a little bit for me. So I want to go back to this thought thing. So there's this quote that starts off, and it was in the summary. It also comes back at the end slightly different, but it's about the thoughts being the only reality. So Jake once said, sometimes a thought is closer to truth, to reality, than an action. You can say anything, you can do anything, but you can't fake a thought. And at the end, this is when the girlfriend is hiding from the janitor, and she personalizes that thought and says, we can't do whatever we want, but we can think whatever we want. Anyone can think anything. Thoughts are the only reality. It's true. I'm sure of it now. Thoughts are never faked or bluffed. So even though both of these are obviously from Jake, it's tying back into that title of I'm thinking of ending things because that thought is real. Like you can't control that thought.
Mm-hmm. I agree. It was very, and it's also just an interesting concept to think about because I don't think I've ever thought of it from that point of view, the difference between actions and thoughts, because it's so true. Like you can't fake a thought. Whatever you think is what you think. You can't pretend that you didn't fake it because you did.
That's so true.
There's no way around it. So if you think something terrible, you don't have to say that you did it, but you thought it anyways, and it's it is what it is.
And it is true. Like when you have a thought, like a little niggling thought in the back of your mind, and once you think it, you can't get it out of there. Especially if it's like you have a bad feeling about someone or you feel like something's wrong, like then it just kind of keeps growing. You know what I mean? Like you can't just forget about that. It's like planted in your head.
Yeah.
And I also think, they talk a lot about like perception and about she's telling a story and he says something about like, oh, memories are just fiction anyway. And it's basically like our actions are affected by other people's perception because we do things, because of social cues and social norms, and in relationships because we're with another person. So all of these actions are affected by other people. The way that, a thought comes into your head and then the way that it turns into an action is affected by other people.
And it's also the way that he interprets, I think, a thought is the fact that he kind of writes stories. So he creates fantasies from his thoughts and things that he wished that he can't do the action, so he writes it. It's kind of like, oh, wait, I would maybe put it.
Yeah. Okay, so why do you think Jake invented this relationship?
Loneliness and the fact that he probably has regrets of stopping himself from giving her his phone number and acting on it, because he clearly had a good interaction with her. But I think the social insecurities that he has stopped him from being able to take it any further. And probably, I feel like he doesn't really have he clearly doesn't have any friends. That's like, I don't think he has anybody. Well, it's interesting though, because he was at trivia with friends. So I don't know. Like, it's weird. It's so
friends.
Yeah. It's like a weird thing to think about, because it seems like he clearly has the capability to talk to people, but it stops at a certain point and he can't progress any further. So it's just, I don't know. I feel like this book at some points went over my head, and I tried so hard to like ground myself and get back into it, and I just...
Yeah, I think with the friend thing, I think like those were college friends and he had more friends when he was younger, because then even in the conversations between like the strangers, they are talking about how he used to associate with people and then he just like kept getting more antisocial as the years went on. So, I think you created a scenario for himself where he was happy and loved and not alone, because we do find out that his parents had passed, like when he's, middle-aged, current Jake. His parents had passed. He was a big loner. He didn't associate with other people. He was even referred to as being nonverbal. Like that's how much he wouldn't associate with other people. And he obviously does have regrets about what could have happened with the girlfriend if they had actually dated. Like maybe his whole life would have been on this other trajectory.
Yeah.
And he would have had the confidence to do all of these things. And like you said, loneliness is a big theme throughout this whole book. And that's what we said, that the girlfriend is going back and forth. And I want to read a quote from the narrator. Quote, "Did I really need confirmation to end things? I'm going to be single for a long time, probably forever, and I'm fine with that. I'm happy on my own. Lonely, but content. Being alone isn't the worst thing. It's okay to be lonely. I can deal with loneliness. We can't have everything. I can't have everything." And it's so obvious that, yes, this is the girlfriend, speaking, but the girlfriend is created by Jake. this is Jake convincing himself that it's okay that he's alone.
Yeah.
Even though he's lonely, he can't have everything.
Yes.
And it's like, that's such a simplistic way of putting it when it's so much deeper than that.
It is.
Another thing that I saw people talking about that I thought was really interesting, what about the girlfriend's personality matches with her being a figment of Jake's imagination? So, like, I think she's very agreeable. She challenges his mind by debating. So when they're in the car on the way there, they're, they have these like intellectual conversations, but she disagrees with him and challenges him a little bit. But then when he randomly changes the subject, she just goes along with it. She was willing to make out with him in that creepy abandoned school parking lot. Like, it just doesn't seem like normal behaviors, or I'm sorry, it doesn't seem like the dynamics of a relationship.
No, because it's interesting to think about, because you're right. It's who she is as a person and how back and forth she is, where she wants to, because even throughout the book, she's going back and forth on if she should end things and everything. So she is very, I don't know what the right word would be. Agreeable is a good one, but it's almost like she doesn't want to upset him sometimes too. Like, she's very almost walking on eggshells during certain situations that happen in the book.
Yeah, because she says, I mean, they've only been dating for a few weeks, but she knows these little quirks about him.
And it's very, you have to think, and you keep forgetting, I forget that it's only been, X amount of weeks, because she's going to meet his family. So you think that would be a longevity kind of relationship. And it is. And she's very in tune to him and seems to not know a lot about him, but understand him on a level that that's you don't get from knowing someone that amount of time.
I agree.
That makes sense. There's no easy way to talk about this book and explain my thoughts, because they're so jumbled. The book itself is jumbled, so I guess this is fair.
We're doing our best. But it's also, even when she's going back and forth, she'll be like, Jake is a great guy.
Yeah.
He takes care of me. He's like,
but
good
then
in bed.
But then there's like times where she's very negative about him, and she almost seems scared of him in a way.
See,
and
yes. And that's why it's like, once you know that she's a figment of Jake's imagination, it's like this is the battle that's going inside his subconscious of like, oh, Jake's a really great guy and he's really, really smart, but also here's all the things wrong with him.
Yeah.
And, he could be a good boyfriend, but no, I'd just rather be alone. And you know what I mean? Like, when you look at it through that lens, it's like, those are Jake's thoughts about himself. He's trying to convince himself that he is a good guy and he has potential, and he's very intelligent and he's a great catch and all this stuff. And then, but I totally understand why someone wouldn't want to be with him, or why someone would want to break up with him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's like, her personality, her thoughts, which we know she can't control, are the ones that are saying like, oh, sometimes Jake is, he does these weird things, or I don't want to upset him or whatever. But when she's actually, the actions are, oh yeah, you want to drive down this creepy road? Like, I'm going to question it a little bit, but not too much. And, oh, you want to make out here and take my shirt off? Sure, I'm turned on.
You want to like leave the car and take the keys with you and go inside the building and leave me here? Sure.
To go and confront someone in the middle of nowhere? Okay.
I think just kind of what we talked about before, there were just so many open-ended questions with no resolution. And I was almost hoping that when I watched the movie, I would kind of get some of, because before I watched it, I saw that he was like an executive producer and like wrote the screenplay. So, which also makes the movie interesting in itself, but it was, I don't know. And even like when she's in like the school, it seems like the school has 100 floors.
Oh yeah. She keeps going up and up and up.
And up.
And then there's a part where like, she's never been to this school before, but she knows exactly where the gym is. She knows exactly where the locker room is because it's Jake.
Yeah. And then there's just a portion of the novel where she's hiding under a bench and there's just a song playing on repeat. But there's no...
Oh, yeah, I forgot about the music.
But there's
that shit was weird.
It said that it was a song that was playing in the car when they were driving to the farm, but there's really no reasoning for why this song is so impactful on the situation.
Yeah, I also read someone online saying that like the whole thing at the farm with the pig, the story where it was like being
Yeah.
eaten by the maggots is like how he views like the end of life.
Okay.
Like that it just keeps getting worse, which for him it is because they say how, he's like his behavior is continuing to escalate in these ways and he's, becoming more and more withdrawn and
Mm-hmm.
obviously more suicidal as the time goes on. But something about how like that story of the pig is because he's like being eaten from the inside out.
Okay.
Which I'm like, okay, I see it.
So I think going into this book blind, it is smart. And then once you get to the ending, you definitely want to go back and like reread the entire thing, knowing now what the ending is.
I also saw a lot of people saying that the audiobook is the way to go because apparently at the end, the narration changes.
Okay.
So I feel like that would be more impactful when the narration's changing from the girlfriend to Jake.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
that's
That
also
would
like a
be...
tricky thing that they did.
Yeah. I think that this is not the type of book that I read typically. And I don't believe that I almost feel like I wish someone had told me, you need to go into this book with a clear mind and you need to be ready to think. Which, back on thoughts. You know what I mean? Like, you have to be
Yeah.
ready to, like, think. Like, this book is not straightforward. Like, it's like a fucking zigzag. So you need to really think about what's happening. And so lately the books I read are not like that. So this was, I feel like I couldn't enjoy it as much because I wasn't aware of the trajectory that it was going to go on.
I feel like ideally this is a book that you should read twice or even, read and listen to because you get those two different perspectives. Because it does seem so surface level. It's a girlfriend and a boyfriend taking a road trip.
Yeah.
And she wants to break up with him and they have these conversations and there is a lot of conversations that I feel like we can't even really discuss, but there's a lot of like philosophical discussions that they have and they talk about there's a couple things that I had to reread because I'm like, oh, that's actually kind of profound. Like
that's
even
the
when he's talking about
the thing. Yeah, like I wasn't prepared for that, and I also I'm reading this book in the evening when my brain is fried because I've worked all day and was a mom, and now I'm just like decompressing at night on the couch, and this book is not decompressing at all. So I think that that's another reason too. Like it was just. I feel like I need to like go sit in a room somewhere by myself and read the whole thing in its entirety and allow myself to sit with it. I think that's the best way to read that book.
All right, so let's get to our ratings. Our rating scale is obviously Dairy Queen Blizzards.
Obviously.
It's on the nose, but what else could I do here?
Sometimes
I could have done the pigs getting eaten by the maggots, but here we are where we are. So how many Dairy Queen Blizzards? Also, I really want a Dairy Queen Blizzard, but how many Dairy Queen Blizzards are you giving I'm Thinking of Ending Things?
2.5.
Okay.
Yeah. I was going to do 2, but then I talked about it a little bit and I was like, I can pop it at a half star. But it just wasn't for me personally. And it's interesting to me. I would almost love to talk to someone who really fucking loved this book and understood it from start to finish. And then maybe that could influence my feelings about it. But where I'm at now, I didn't love it. I was left confused a lot. And I was bored at times, if that makes sense. Because it just wasn't... once you got towards the end, like I said, one chapter was so long too. Like chapters were like kind of disjointed, some were like short, some were long, and I don't know. It just wasn't for me personally. The author though seems interesting, and I think his mind is very interesting. I think he's a very smart, intelligent author, and I would be willing to read something else by him. Going into it now, I know who he is as an author, but this one didn't hit the mark for me.
All valid. I wasn't into it at first. at all. But I actually, after reflecting on it, I think the writing is kind of brilliant. Like we talked about, there was a lot of like philosophical discussions that they had, and it's a horror novel without any real horror. This is what I was wanting from Shirley Jackson's
Yeah.
book, and this is what I was expecting from Shirley Jackson's book, and I feel like Iain Reid actually accomplished it. I mean, there wasn't anything actually scary in this book, but it did scare me. You know, like the back of the book is right. You'll be scared and you won't know why.
Yes. Yeah.
And I do like how deep it goes once you fall down the rabbit hole. It's endless. I mean, it's basically a conspiracy theory. This entire book is a conspiracy theory. It's like the photo in the house that you referenced. It looks like the narrator because the narrator is Jake. The caller that's never really addressed, but it's somehow Jake's subconscious. Like, it's just, you could go on for ages. And it's not what I normally like to read either, because if I think too much, I'll have an existential crisis. But I do think it's super unique.
I agree with that. I think that is a very unique approach to this kind of topic.
I think I'm giving it 3.5 Dairy Queen Blizzards. I'm between 3 and 3.5, but after talking about it, I'm going to go 3.5.
There you go.
All right, so let's talk about this movie.
If we must.
Some big name actors in this movie, which I was like,
interesting that Brie Larson was originally cast as the girlfriend. Did you know that? Yeah.
No.
I went on the Wikipedia rabbit hole after I watched the movie too. So Brie Larson was originally casted to play the girlfriend, and then Jessie Buckley was replacing her. But see, you don't watch the TV show Fargo.
No.
This movie was all of the actors, like Jesse Plemons and David, I can't pronounce his last name, but the guy from Harry Potter. They're all in Fargo in different seasons. And I will admit to you,
different seasons?
Yeah, because Fargo, it's a different cast every season, because a different storyline every season.
Gotcha.
So
okay.
The movie itself, when it started, I immediately got the Fargo vibes. Like, that's exactly how Fargo the show is. It makes you think, and you're confused, and it's quirky and it's odd, but you like enjoy it. So these actors were actually great choices for this movie, because I've seen them do this kind of acting in TV.
It's funny because that's actually exactly how I felt about Toni Collette, because she's in Hereditary.
Yes, I know she does like those weird
fucking horror movie.
I haven't watched it because I can't handle horror movies. But yeah, like it's she wasn't in any of the Fargo seasons, but those other three main actors were. So it was I thought it was just kind of funny how that
it's funny, and they were all. Well, I didn't know her, Jessie Buckley, but I knew all the other ones. They're so recognizable, and I'm like, wow, interesting. And I'm looking up that 82% of the critic reviews on Rotten Tomatoes are positive, and the average rating is 7.5 out of 10.
I don't get it. But again, like, I just think that this entire book and movie just isn't my cup of tea, so I didn't take from it what other people do that are into these kind of things.
But I still, even that being said, don't understand the movie. Like, no. I actually hated the movie.
Yeah.
They don't really do this whole, like, loneliness thing in the movie. He doesn't seem as smart.
It's so different from the book. Like, they're actually two different things.
And the whole, like, jumping with the different ages, and then the mom's, like, on her deathbed, and then she's young, and Jake's a baby. I mean, that part, I guess I kind of got because it was, like, in Jake's mind, like, these flashbacks of all these different memories. I was okay with the majority of the movie, and then once they got to the school, I don't know how to explain it.
One of the things that was disappointing for me about book to movie is that the janitor in the book gives off like this creepy salad fingers vibe. So I was like expecting that in the janitor in the movie, and this guy's like a grandpa. I'm like, no, like that's not.
Yeah, but he was also spying on the girls. on the girls in the Oklahoma play.
No, I'm not saying that he's not creepy. Like that, that's
Oh,
fine.
okay.
I'm just saying my interpretation of what the janitor appeared and looked like
Got
is
it.
not at all what the movie did at all.
Yeah. And then at the end when she like gives him that hug, I was like, "Oh, that's so nice." And I'm like, "Wait, but he's a creep." And then when they randomly break into the full-on ballet routine, when they're dancing in the hallways and they're dancing to the lockers and
Yeah.
closing the open locker doors, my jaw was on the floor. I was so confused. Eric actually walked in while I was watching it at that part, and he's like, "Are you watching a movie with no words?" And I was like, "I don't know if this is the same movie that I was watching.
Mm-hmm.
The actors are different. It could be a completely different movie. I don't know." And then when they get into the fight in the gym and he gets stabbed and there's red streamers, and then at the end he's accepting an award and just starts singing.
Well, he's actually singing, because I looked it up. It's a song from Oklahoma, the Broadway show.
Yes. Okay,
Yeah.
that I got because it was like I assumed that the set was the same.
Because for whatever reason, Oklahoma is just a running theme in this movie.
Like a main theme.
Also didn't understand where that came from, but yeah, I don't know. And the aging makeup was so cartoonish, which I know was the whole point. And which was,
Yeah.
and the main actors had the more outlandish aging makeup than like the other audience members. So that was an interesting thing. I thought that was quirky, but yeah, it was just it was weird. And then not that I wanted to see him commit suicide or anything, but there was also really I didn't get the vibe that he was going to like kill himself. You know what I mean? Like
You didn't get that from the movie.
No. And again, the way that they did it was so different than in the book that it's like literally I feel like they were two separate entities. Like they were not the same thing.
Exactly. And that's why I was so surprised that he had such a big hand in it. But in the movie, you're made to feel like the girlfriend is the one with the psychosis and with the, whatever mental health issues. But then in the movie, I didn't feel like the girlfriend was Jake. Like I felt like the girlfriend was separate.
Right. Mm-hmm. There was no way to determine that was the whole point of the movie. And the fucking pig, like the pig that's just bleeding as it's walking, and then he's naked. I'm like, why are you naked? Like, I don't know. I
forgot about the naked old man. Yeah. The CGI pig. Wow, it was a lot.
The movie itself is psychotic, and maybe that's the whole point.
I just felt like if the movie was closer to the book, I probably would have liked the movie more because, like you said, I was hoping that the movie would help me understand the book more. But instead, I was like, I can't even comprehend the movie. I truly disliked it so much I didn't even look into it on Reddit because I was like, I don't want to know about the theories and the whatever's going on. I'm going to focus on the book.
And the girls, like in the ice cream shop in the movie, like I get it. The two pretty girls were, because I know like he watches girls or whatever, and like in the school and stuff. And then at one point in the movie, he passes some girl in the hallway that's like carrying books. I guess she's kind of like an outcast, and that's who the girl is in the ice cream shop. And I'm just like, does he feel like a kindred spirit in her, and that's why he's imagining her in this situation? So I don't know.
And see that aspect of the movie, not that I enjoyed it, but that I totally understood, like the way that they kept showing the girls and them practicing and him, just being a creeper and being nearby and kind of watching. And it wasn't even, I didn't see it in like a super predatory way. It could have just been in a like wanting to be involved kind of way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he didn't come across to me as like a predator.
Yeah.
In the book or in the movie. I just think that it's a whole like it's a social thing. Like he just he wants to envisioning what his life could have been if he was normal.
I kind of want to listen to the audiobook and see if I also feel like I want to see how they do like the that feeling of like tension and stuff. I feel like that will be good in the audiobook.
Yeah.
Well, that's all we have for you today. If you like what you heard, I'd be surprised. Please make sure to follow, subscribe, and rate and review the podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. If you have any book recommendations, questions for us, thoughts on this book, we want to hear them. You can email us at fullybookedcalfpod@gmail.com. Also, be sure to follow us on TikTok and Instagram at fullybookedcalfpod to see our upcoming reads. Thanks for checking us out, and remember,
if you need us, we're fully fucking confused, but also booked.
bye!
Bye.